please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ann, could you just please let the record show that all 7 commissioners are present? And we do have a couple of pieces of correspondence relating to items that are on the agenda. Actually, one was pulled, so there's just one. And then we do not have any minutes, so we'll move right into the city manager's report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one street aid expenditure to Delmarva Power in the amount of $9,099.90 for streetlights.
Can we get a motion and a second on the street aid?
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the street aid expenditures of $9,099.90. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
We received good news this week from the county that our wastewater planning grant, we have been awarded $50,000 for a matching planning grant from DENREC's Water Infrastructure Advisory Council, and the grant will be used to offset the cost of sewer inspections and sewer assessments. So that's good news.
Great.
Delaware Avenue stormwater improvements, the Phase 2 work began this week and should be wrapping up shortly. This, of course, is the work from First Street between Delaware Avenue and Wilmington Avenue between First Street and Second Street. The Lake Avenue Streetscape Phase 2 Improvements Project, that's a project that has been approved by DelDOT. The DelDOT approved the design as part of the requirement for their funding, and the city will hold a public meeting Monday, January 7th, 10 a.m., right here at City Hall, but on the 3rd floor training room. The city has sent letters, which is a requirement from DelDOT, to property owners bordering the project, informing them of the project and of the meeting on January 27th. Information is posted on the city's website under current city projects. This week, we also held a Grove Park Canal Dock pre-bid meeting. That meeting was held this past Tuesday. Potential bidders showed their interest in this project. It was a good turnout with approximately 12 contractors in attendance. The tentative schedule right now is to open bids on January 8th, and the recommendation for award of the bid will be at the regular commissioners meeting on January 17th. And the city recently launched a 10-minute walk to a park campaign in partnership with the Trust for Public Land, National Recreation and Park Association, and Urban Land Institute. Mayor Coons signed on establishing the ambitious goal that all Americans and all residents of the city of Rehoboth Beach should live within a 10-minute walk or a half mile of a high-quality park or green space area. More about this program is listed on the city's website. And in celebration of Christmas and New Year's, City Hall will be closed on Wednesday, December 25th, and Wednesday, January 1st. Residential trash pickup is on the regular schedule during the 2 holiday weeks, and that can also be found on the city website. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for city manager? City solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple quick things. First, as you know, for the public, we did have an executive session today. Some of you have followed the Board of Adjustment decisions recently on the interpretation of gross floor area. Those discussions have made it their way to the commissioners, and they were sort of interested in what's happening. There has been a threat of litigation based upon one of the Board of Adjustment decisions. So today we did meet. There were those discussions led to some policy considerations. So my expectation is that the commissioners are going to pursue those policy considerations and possibly propose some amendments to the ordinance going forward. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Can I just add a thank you, Glenn? The session this morning, the FOIA training for all committees and commissioners was very useful. I attended it 2 years ago, was not able to come last year, and I think it's not only a great review for anybody who's seen it before, but I have to tell you, I'm disappointed that we have so many new committee members and they weren't there, so I'm hoping maybe there's some message we can send to all of the committees. Basically, I think it should be a requirement for anyone on a committee to have that information available. You know, I mean, what they missed was the Q&A, which I thought was
Right.
very valuable as well. But, I mean, I would just like to think there's a mechanism for making sure that all of our committee members are trained, essentially.
Yeah, and Ann has let us know that it is up on the city portal.
Wonderful.
The packet that they
Right.
put out this morning.
That's great.
Okay, let's move right on down, reports. We'll go right to committee reports. Animal issues, Dick, anything?
Very briefly, a couple of weeks ago, we had a lengthy discussion and an introduction of the code changes from the Animal Issues Committee. That's Chapter 88, Animal Code. We have taken seriously the feedback. The solicitor is working on getting that legally into the document. So that will be back in front of us for discussion and possibly a vote on the January 17th Commissioner meeting.
Bandstand convention?
Just the only thing I wanted to report out on is that we have two folks on the committee who are putting together a strategic plan for consideration by the commission and the city manager regarding the future of the convention center. So I thank Sharon and her staff for meeting with that group yesterday. We'll be looking at things like where we should invest, how we should promote, if at all, and we'll be coming to the full board here in January with a presentation on that proposed strategy, again, at the the January regular meeting. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Boardwalk and Beach, Mr. Mills?
Thank you. I'm going to defer reporting till our next meeting. We are still in the midst of tackling certain topics. And I want to remind you that I've solicited from department heads, city manager, and you all any potential future agenda topics. So please submit them when you can. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anybody from the Environment Committee.
I could just add that they have had one meeting. It was a robust discussion in terms of doing some priority setting as they figure out who they are as a new committee and as they set an agenda for the future. They will meet the first Friday of every month, so their next meeting is the first Friday of January at 11 a.m. in this room.
And I just encourage folks as a follow-on as well that they sponsor a green drinks session every month, and that goes out to anybody that's interested in environmental issues. There's a different topic, different speaker for that. And Susan will be talking about it a little later in the agenda. But the group is working with SOLA as well and the Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association to look at single-use plastics ban in the city. So again, Susan will be talking about that, or we all will later. But their committee's already kind of really has gone out full force and is doing a lot of good things and thinking about a lot of things that we'll bring forward. So thanks.
Don't see anybody from the Law Oversight. Mayor's Advisory on Trees.
Did not meet in December, so no updates.
Nothing from the Parking Advisory, although I am going to put on the January workshop agenda discussion of those parking recommendations that the Parking Committee had made last meeting. So if you all can refresh yourselves on that. And Ann, if you can send that out again to everybody for the January 6th workshop. And then Streets and Transportation.
Streets and Transportation. Yeah, actually, I do have a bit of an update here because at the last meeting, we took a vote on a number of recommendations, and some of them I'll go quickly through because, as Mayor's already told me, they're in the works. But they're basically two main areas, the first being King Charles Avenue, the desire to have beach block crosswalks consistent from First Street all the way down to Lake Drive. Very wide street, as you all know, and in season, it's a constant pedestrian crossing area. that needs to be protected, particularly given the width of the streets. So in addition to painting stripes at Newcastle, Stokely, Norfolk, Rodney, and St. Lawrence, we'll be adding stripes across on the north side at Laurel and the south side of Hickman to make it consistent all the way down. And then one of the other big recommendations, and I think some of this will come up in conjunction with other initiatives going on and also during the budget, a recommendation to remove the permit parking on this, this is on Surf Avenue, to remove permit parking on the east side of the street, so on the beach side, from Oak to Henlopen, and create a bicycle and pedestrian lane on that side. Continuing the white stripe that begins at the corner of Lake, where Lake transitions to Surf, and then reconnects with the bicycle lane on Henlopen. And one of the advantages to that is that it will keep bikes from crossing there where Surf meets Lake, and it'll be much safer overall. And there's some other recommendations that I won't get into here that go along with that about the double lines. But part of the thinking was to use the Deauville Lot Beach for drop-offs, and to add more bicycle racks near the beach access points at Oak and Park to encourage bicycle use and reduce the need for the sand fences. Those are our immediate updates. And when funds become available, to consider paving the gravel on the right side of the west side of the street as well.
Great, thank you. And I spoke with the city manager this week, and actually they are in the process, but probably between now and Memorial Day, of taking a long, hard look at those crosswalks on King Charles. And if you all remember, also in the parking recommendations were the possibility that sometime in the future, and I don't know if it's this summer or the next summer, of looking into having angled-in parking down on King Charles too, because it is a very wide street, and much wider than a lot. And then also, the project that the city manager and our architect, contractor, engineer put on the table last week will hopefully tie in not only the park in front of the Henlopen with ideas, but with that
I think the two would go together very well, what I've seen of that plan.
and the maybe constructive changes up around on the north side of Henlopen
Right.
to have a path and some.
I have, excuse me, I have a question about the silent policeman. There was one by the church. Are there any still there?
Yeah.
I think the
so.
church, there's two. At least one on the northern end. I think there may be two, but at least one.
Has there been recommendation for any more, or is this,
No,
is your group happy
trying
with
to
this?
think, we talked certainly about the crosswalks on Rehoboth Avenue and the need to have not just silent policemen there, but have lights and as well. But I don't know that we talked about more of them on King Charles.
Okay.
They're, my thought personally, if we could get more parking spaces down King Charles as well as the crosswalks, I think that'll calm the traffic, because a lot of people tend to come up and overpass the church and then take off for the lake. But I think if we have angled in as well as the crosswalks, I think that'll help. As far as the silent policeman, I talked to Bill Maffey about it last year. Apparently, these things are expensive. They're about $400 or $500, and I don't know if you've seen it. If you look at the one over on Surf Avenue, it gets beaten up
No, I know that one
terribly.
does.
And I think the one over by the church doesn't as much, but something, if we were to think about putting something like that on Rehoboth Avenue, I think the trucks or somebody.
Yeah, no, I wasn't
right.
suggesting it for Rehoboth Avenue. I was just wondering if, had there been any recommendations as far as King Charles, since you were putting in more crosswalks? So it was just a question. Yeah, I'm certainly looking to have better crosswalks marked on the avenue, and I'm still in favor of the lights potentially for that area, so.
Great, thank you. Carol is not here. Susan, do you want to say anything about the chamber?
The only thing I'll say is that yesterday, I'm in my capacity as liaison with the chamber, met with the board for the first time, their 19-member board, and we'll probably be going back. It was mostly just a meet and greet, but I'll probably be going back early in the year to talk about things that concern them and initiatives coming from here. So it was a good meeting.
Great, thank you. Just the Historical Society, I don't know if any of you have seen that the museum has taken on a new color.
You can't miss it.
It's pretty bright. I think the yellow matches the mural that we've put up there a number of years ago. So I think it catches everybody's attention, and the city was very, fortunate for us to fund the painting that took place. We had to do some extra work construction-wise on the walls because there had been some seepage over the years. But I think when it's all finished, and hopefully it's the next couple days, it'll be very attractive and attract more people, and with the dock coming and so on and so forth. So thank you on that. Main Street. Edward, anything?
I'll just, we had the Community Unity Dinner, which was wildly successful. It was about a 90% increase over last year, which was the first year bringing it back. And Main Street thanks all the city support for letting us use the facilities, and I think it was a great, we saw quite a few city staff that were in attendance as well, and very happy. And Main Street's very happy with the painting of the museum building. It's much easier to tell people when to make a left or
Yep.
right into the parking lot now.
Don't think we need spotlights anymore. Thank you, Ed. Dick, anything, Senior Center?
Just to add that the membership has been increasing. They are now at over 1,200 paid members, and they're at the point where they're adding a new professional position to help
Really?
deal with the increased numbers of classes and the number of people that are using the facility.
That's great. All right, thank you. Carol, I saw you just came in. You have anything? Susan had said something about the chamber, but nope, perfect.
I just mentioned that I met with you all yesterday. Yeah.
All right, we're going to move right into number 13, which is permit of compliance hearing, a request by Ronald E. Langford of the Sands Incorporated to modify the floor plan of an existing restaurant serving alcoholic beverages with a patio known as the Sand Crab Beach Bar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could take a moment and put a few things on the record in connection with this application. As you know, Commissioners, this is an application for modification of a outdoor patio. It's come before you. It currently has a permanent compliance, but because of the modification, it's required to come back before you. There are certain things that you're required to consider while you conduct this hearing. I'll read each of those. They come from Section 215-5 of the City Code. So in making your decision, you're supposed to consider, first, whether the applicant has demonstrated that the establishment's primary purpose will be that of a restaurant or dinner theater as defined in this chapter. Second, whether the establishment meets all the city's applicable zoning and licensing provisions. Third, whether the establishment would be a detriment to the peace, order, and quiet of the neighborhood and the city. Fourth, whether the establishment will have an adverse impact on the neighboring properties or on the city of Rehoboth Beach, considering the impact on traffic, parking, and noise. And fifth, whether the applicant had made any false representation or statements to the city's employees or the commissioners in order to induce or prevent action by the city, not only in regard to the pertinent pending application under this chapter, but also in regard to the issuance of a building permit or business license for the subject establishment. So those are the considerations you're required to take into account. Of course, there are other things that would be appropriate to consider as well. In your packets, you should find a notice of public hearing that was posted on November 22nd, 2019. It was sent to all the residents within 200 feet. It was published in the Cape Gazette on Tuesday, November 26th, published in the Coast Press on Wednesday, December 4th, published in the Delaware State News on Thursday, November 28th. You should also have an application for permanent compliance. It was received by Building and Licensing on October 3rd, 2019. It was signed by Ronald Langford on October 2nd of 2019. There's a stamp indicating that the application fee has been paid. In your package, there is also the existing liquor license with an expiration date of September 30th, 2020. There is also a sample menu for the Atlantic Boardwalk Grill that was received by Building and Licensing on October 3rd. There's also a sample menu for the Sand Crab Beach Bar, also received by Building and Licensing on October 3rd, 2019. You have the minutes from the January 16, 2015 meeting of the Mayor and Commissioners when this application was previously heard for permanent compliance on this patio. You also have a number of drawings, the first one being titled Renovation to Sand Crab Beach Bar, done by Bruce J. Moneta, who's an architect with a Lewis address. That has several sheets to it and was received on October 3rd by Building and Licensing. The sheets range from A-1 all the way to A-5. There's a second drawing titled Atlantic Sands, Atlantic Seafood Grill. Was received by Building and Licensing on October 3rd, 2019. It's dated October of 2019, and it's got sheet number 1 labeled on it, and it was prepared by Scaled Engineering. That's everything that I have in the packet and is now on the record of this application. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We can just go to,
You can go right to, do you typically give a report?
I
forget
do
now.
have one for this, yes.
You do?
Yep.
Let's do that before you go to the applicant.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners, members of the public, and city staff. Before you, application number 10-1902 is a amended restaurant permit of compliance and dining patio supplemental permit of compliance modification for the Sand Crab Beach Bar at 101 North Boardwalk, located within the Atlantic Sands Hotel. This is an application seeking to amend the previously approved permit of compliance to allow modifications to the existing patio area adjacent to the boardwalk and existing service and kitchen areas that serve the same. The following is a complete report for the application referenced above to be heard. Pursuant to Section 215-3, the applicant is the Sands Incorporated, 202-246 Coastal Highway, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 19971. The name of the restaurant is the Sand Crab Beach Bar. The style is breakfast, lunch, and dinner with full liquor store service. The restaurant is open Monday through Sunday, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Again, the restaurant location is a 101 North Boardwalk in Rehoboth. Pursuant to the plans submitted, the following is true. The property is located at 101 North Boardwalk, part of the Atlantic Sands Hotel. The property is owned by the Sands Incorporated, 20246 Coastal Highway, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 19971. The area is an existing patio with proposed permanent seated dining in a C1 Central Commercial Zoning District. Pursuant to Section 270-13C3D, a restaurant serving alcohol and beverages is a permitted use. The restaurant areas are as follows: service area, kitchen facilities, storage, restrooms, employee stations, hallways, and utilities. Proposed, they are saying 2,160 square foot. I have them calculated as 2,012 square feet. The dining area is 762. I have them calculated because I included the entire patio at 2,050. Permanent seated dining area, they have listed at 48. I counted 48. The bar area is proposed is 750. I have calculated at 778.44. Bar seats, they are proposed 13. They're actually showing only 12. The patio floor area is 1980. I have them calculated at 2129.16. And that's the entire patio. The ratio of bar to permanent seated dining is 12% as proposed. I have them at 12% calculated. Pursuant to Section 274 definitions, there is a patio area of 2,129.16 square feet with a total mix of 108 permanent and bar-style seating as defined by Section 270-19B. Section 270-19 allows for a dining patio of up to 750 square feet. The beach bar area is proposed to be an enclosed service area accessible for alcoholic consumption and is provided with accessible egress requirements. The site has available a total of 0 parking spaces devoted to the Sand Crab Beach Bar. The designated areas for proposed food storage and preparation are shown and labeled on the attached plans. The distance to the nearest property lines of the nearest church, public park, and residential lot are as follows. All Saints Episcopal Church, approximately 1,000 feet away. Lake Garrar Park, it's 1,752 feet by way of a west on Baltimore Avenue, north on North First Street, and the nearest residential lot is 6 and 8 Maryland Avenue. The applicant has stated that the approximate percentage of revenue between the sale of alcohol and food is 35% alcohol and 65% food. Authorization for the city to investigate is attached. Written and dated declaration by the applicant is also attached, and the fee of $1,000 has been paid.
I have a couple of questions. One is, has a building permit been issued for the construction of this beach patio
Yes,
and
ma'am.
bar?
A
Okay,
building-
so this will not have to go through the planning commission?
Not in my opinion, no, because the patio is existing, they're only adding a structure to it.
Okay, so something I've always had a question about, really, proposed versus calculated square feet. Based on what's been proposed and what you have calculated, is there going to be major changes to the plan as it's currently been, sent to us, or?
Not that I see. The only major change is obviously going to be the designation of an actual alcohol consumption area and the building of the tiki bar, none of which really changes the dimensions of the patio.
So, but in terms of dining area, what's been proposed and what's been calculated are totally different things, and what is permitted, as I understand it, is 750 square feet? Is that right?
That is correct, but the patio is an existing non-conforming patio. It was there before 1991, excuse me.
Okay.
So although the calculated is different than the 750 proposed, you're saying that's fine?
It all is within the guidelines, yes.
And the difference in the calculation is just that you included the entire patio and they were included in only the dining part of it.
That is correct.
Okay.
I mean, does that mean that there won't be any tables in that other area, or?
They are showing tables, so if the permit of compliance is approved today, they will have to adhere to the table layout that they're presenting.
Okay.
But they would not be permitted to add any more seats than what would be approved today.
And I don't understand why their number is so much lower than yours.
It could be calculation. They may not have included the stair area. There's a couple areas that I have included that they may have not, like the stairs coming from the pool area. I counted that in as part of the patio.
Okay.
There's some other areas that,
So you don't sit down with them after you've done your calculation and say, so my numbers are different, and these are the reasons why, and so there's not a meeting of the minds at that point? This is the way you've always done it, proposed versus calculated?
it is. When we would do that if they were to be coming in to propose a new structure. So if they were building this patio from a fresh start, we would sit down and go over their numbers. Considering that the patio is existing, to save some time, we've done the review, we've presented our numbers back and forth, and here we are today.
Okay.
Matt, thanks for the good work on the report here. Do you see any problem areas, any concerns for public safety, any risk areas for the city?
So we do have it in our code that a bar cannot be out on that patio. They are not showing any kind of utilities being out to that tiki bar. It is a concern that possibly that tiki bar could be converted into a full-service bar at a time or another. So maybe it's something that you would like to stipulate that doesn't happen. But right now, they're proposing that it's just table service, basically. But other than that, excuse me, I see no problem areas as long as the seats match what is approved.
And as I look at this drawing, and maybe I'm missing something, where are the drinks going to be made?
The drinks are going to be made in the bar. There is a bar that is is in one of the hotel rooms, basically, that's
Okay.
converted into the bar area.
Okay.
And you'll note that another room is being converted to an ice cream shop.
Yep.
And another room is being converted to a sandwich shop.
Oh, okay. All right, now I see it. Existing service bar was.
Correct.
Now it's going to be ice cream.
And to-
Existing storage and umbrella is now going to be.
Right, and to be clear, some of those areas are already converted into kitchen area from a previous permanent compliance application.
And given the fact that the converted new service bar window is within the hotel, may I assume that the servers will pick up drinks and take it out? Or, I mean, isn't it against, because,
That is the assumption we're going under, that it is going to be strictly table service and there will be no bar service.
Or window service, I guess. You're asking, will there be window service to a patron? And my understanding, but we'll hear from the applicant, Mr. Savage is here. My understanding is that the servers may walk up to that window to retrieve a beverage and then they'll walk it to the
Right,
table.
right, correct,
And that would be the same for the seating around the tiki bar?
correct,
If somebody wants a drink, they'd order it from the server and they'd go back in here?
correct.
Any other questions for Matt? Before we want
Just
to,
to give you a code reference, when Matt mentioned that there's not, the city prohibits bars on the patio. That comes from 27019 subsection B5, where it lists a number of things for patios, but B5 specifically says there shall be no bar on the dining patio. Want to go to the applicant?
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Thank you, Matt.
Good afternoon, Carlton Savage, here representing the Sands Hotel. Thank you for the introduction, Matt, Glenn. Basically, exactly what Matt said, what we're doing is renovating the existing facility. Many of you know it. It doesn't really have an identity. We're trying to give it more of an identity. And by doing so, we are going to renovate the 5 old hotel rooms. Right now, they're storage and kitchen and different things. We are going to have 2 areas that serve as a kitchen with a window that the server will come up, pick up the food, take it to the patrons inside of that 750 square feet. The same thing with the bar. There will be a bartender inside the building. No drinks will be made outside on the patio. Therefore, no bar on the patio. I think the one thing with identity is you walk by now, we had a lot of low seated tables. We are going to have high top tables. That you can see a little bit further out into the
Very nice.
So we're trying to give it more of an identity. The we do not have any basically a server will have to serve everybody in that patio. So that hopefully clarifies that. We had some discussions beforehand about that and there was some confusion, but I think internally we hash it out unless you guys have another opinion of that. But the only thing we're considering different than what is proposed right here, we actually have our building permit. We have started our demolition on the project. We haven't really started building anything per se. This meeting obviously is a big part of that. But we will, we did sort of lay out the patio tiki hut. That structure is a little smaller than we thought it was going to be. We don't intend to make that any larger from a countertop table space, but we are considering maybe covering a little more area. I don't know if that affects the dining patio, as I believe the dining definition says it can be covered, uncovered, but we may try to make it the structure to cover more people. As of right now, we'd have sort of that structure with some umbrellas. We may try to cover more of the entire space, so it's a more permanent covered area. That would help out in the shoulder season when it gets cooler and things like that.
That's not going to change the seating arrangement, though, right? The seating arrangement will stay the same.
I think we show 60 seats, all seated. There's no, basically that center hut acts as a server area. So if you were coming off the boardwalk, you'll walk up to there. That's where you would meet your server. They would take you to either, you can sit here at this hut or you can sit at any of the tables. So that's
Does that
the gist.
affect what you've already calculated in here at all? But if they have
As
a
far-
larger covered area?
As far as the coverage is concerned, no, as long as they do not increase their seating, we're fine.
So one of the things we have in here is dining area is permanent seated is 48 proposed and 48 calculated. And you have bar seats and bar area, although it's not going to really be a bar. So I'm a little bit confused the way you have that listed. It doesn't make me completely comfortable because approving this as bar seats to me means that those 12 seats are going to be at a bar that will be serving alcohol.
I believe the intent is they're proposing to basically differentiate that area where they're going to be allowing liquor consumption to happen. And that is probably a stipulation from the Liquor Control Board, where the other areas, hopefully there will not be any alcohol permitted.
So only the 12-seated area, the bar seats can consume alcohol, and the 48 permanent dining seats cannot?
You've got the other high top tables that would be associated with that tiki bar that would be allowed to consume alcoholic beverages as well.
So that's more than the 12.
No, it just sounds like it's like a circular, like this.
Right.
And you could sit, two of you here and two of you over there, and two people that you don't know versus all four of you are gonna sit at one table. So it just seems like a center island in a kitchen.
Right.
That you can sit around.
Bar might not be the
Not a-
correct term.
And I understand the intent, but I just don't like the way it's worded in here because to me, I'd be a little uncomfortable approving something where there's bar seats when there's really shouldn't be a bar. So I guess maybe we can stipulate within,
Well, that gets to a couple questions, if I could.
Yes.
interrupt for a moment. Mr. Savage, so that entire patio area included the tiki area and the other area. Which of those areas are going to be permitted to have alcohol service?
The entire 750 square feet.
The entire 750 square feet of the raised area?
The application, as I submitted it, it's kind of confusing. This is kind of all of one big restaurant, including the Atlantic Seafood Grill. That's how in the past I think it had to be done. I think changes have been made to the code since then that maybe would say you could have two separate restaurants. I didn't want to really confuse things, keep everything the same. But in this case, the bar seats I reference are the ones inside of the actual Atlantic Seafood Grill, not the ones on the outside. So the 13 that I counted are actually the 13 that I think there's 13 drawn on the plan that I submitted on the colored plan.
Yeah, that's section 003.
So to clarify your question, there are 0 bar seats per se. And the definition of bar is a little bit confusing in the fact that, I think everybody agrees that's where the drinks get made. That's the bar. If your server's bringing you a drink, it's not a bar any longer. And it is a little confusing. It's something that you're going through code revisions now. I think you need to look at it again in some respect, because when I look at the definition of bar area versus restaurant, actually the only difference between them is if you're serving complete meals.
Right.
So that's something that's odd, and didn't want to get into that tonight either, but just kind of.
Is that the intention of the area on the patio? Is that area intended to be an area that you're required to be serving meals, or can you have just service of alcohol in that area?
I mean, absolutely. We are going to serve complete meals to all patrons on that area. All the seats, in this essence, you and your family could sit at that high top tiki hut if you would like. There's nothing saying you can't as a family. It's just bar height, which is.
And there's no intention to have, coolers with beer available, so a server could pull from the cooler a beer and hand it to him from inside the tiki area?
No, we will have some cabinets and things that have napkins and things to serve. There will be no beer taps out there. There will be no liquor bottles. I mean, we're going to probably make it look fun and exciting because that's what people like. But from a bar service standpoint, a bartender inside the building will be making the drinks.
The only difference is the appearance.
Correct. We're trying to.
It's, you could be in a group of 13 or 12, or it could be 12 or 13 individuals who just are sitting at a different, rather than taking up a table.
In essence, it's another table or a piece of furniture. There will not be any liquor. I could see maybe ice because there will be servers out there. So to help out with the drinks, water and that kind of stuff, I could see them having that. But there will be it won't be a full service bar with blenders and the whole deal. So.
And perhaps a better term for my report would be a controlled consumption area versus bar.
Any other questions from Mr. Savage?
It sounds very nice, and
Yeah.
I'm certainly pleased that you're taking care of that area, because it has looked very vacant for several years.
We are trying to do what we can to appease the walking by public that I think would like this area. It's a beautiful view, and how do we capitalize on that and stay within the confines of your code? So,
Very
Could
nice.
you,
Thank you.
could you maybe just, because that service bar area that you can walk up to that's, I know intended for servers, I mean, we've all been bars. We know people will just go up there and try to order stuff. So what, and you said you've talked about that internally. What are you putting in place so that doesn't happen?
I mean, obviously, we have servers that are going to be going there, and we'll have employees there doing it. I mean, we don't want people coming up to that bar because there's not a huge amount of space, so it makes for confusion. We are in the process of looking into the hotel liquor license. I know right now we have a liquor license for a restaurant, and all that stems upon the old agreement. There was a partner in the restaurant, and you could not have a hotel license if the restaurant was owned by two different people. So We are looking at kind of clearing up from a alcohol standpoint the entire hotel versus having this separate restaurant liquor license. We have a restaurant liquor license and a catering liquor license. So that's how we do the ballroom and different things. It really clarifies things. Our attorney right now is working on just blanketing the whole hotel under one hotel liquor license. So that will change some of the, I don't even know if I'd have to stand here today for this permanent compliance if we had that hotel liquor license. I think there's some differences there, so. But what we'll do, in the meantime, we will definitely make sure patrons don't walk up to that bar. That's not our intent.
But yeah, I mean, just if it's labeled staff only or whatever.
Yeah, I think from the appearance, you're gonna know, it's not gonna look like, it's kind of horseshoed going in. There'll be stuff up there to, finish the drinks off, add some condiments and things to it. It's not gonna look like the walk-up bar you're anticipating.
It's sometimes difficult to tell on
From the drawing,
these
yeah.
type of
Yeah.
scale.
Absolutely.
I think it looks great. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
no, it's very exciting.
Thank you.
Any other
Just
before we go to
another
the public?
question. The liquor license, so the Sands Incorporated is the applicant. Atlantic Seafood Company LLC seems to be who has the liquor license. Is there any concern, solicitor, with what's in the application and the license that's attached to this menu?
The license again is in the name of Sands, right?
There's two. It appears that
Right.
there's two.
Yeah, actually, there's two liquor licenses. One in the name of Sands and one in the name of Atlantic Seafood.
So it's, hate to be a stickler for these kinds of things, but it appears that we,
I mean, the point is that the area is licensed, and I'm sure Mr. Langford has control over this entity in some respects. So I don't see it as a big issue. I think
Okay.
it'd be cleaner for our purposes if it was all under the same LLC, but I don't see it as a barrier to granting a permanent compliance for that area
Okay.
under these plans.
okay.
I have one more question, Glenn. It might, I don't know, similar. Obviously, we're giving a new appearance. We're spending a lot of money renovating. If we change the name at this point, how does that affect, do we have to come back in front of this board again, or is that just something that we can?
I don't think the name goes to the issuance of a patio permanent compliance. So I think that they could have come in with 3 separate names, and the name would not have been appropriate for you to consider as a factor in granting or not granting a patio permanent compliance. So I personally don't think that it would require you to come back before this board. Does anybody have any disagreement with that?
Because I don't see it on this thing at all.
And some of this could be mute. I think once we get that hotel liquor license, it would cover the entire hotel as a whole. They make us submit plans for all of that. And that there's different rules, alcohol in and out of your rooms, different things. So right now we're looking at this little teeny window of a restaurant for a liquor, in terms of liquor. Once the hotel liquor license, there are differences. Then you can, lobby bars and things like that are, not necessarily restaurants, that they become spaces that a hotel could have that's different than what you're sort of reviewing as a restaurant.
When are you supposed to be getting that license for the hotel? Do you
It's in the
know?
process. We will most likely, we're kind of waiting to see. I have to check to see if we have to, since we've revised the floor plan here, we'll probably have to revise our liquor license as well. But if we can do the other one instead, the hotel liquor license, then we won't do it twice. We are in the process. I know our attorney's working on it, so.
We can open it up to the public now?
Yes, yep, that'd be appropriate.
We can open it up to the public if anybody's got anything they'd like to say about this permit of compliance. Anybody? Going once? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Now it's for the commissioners to make their final decision, please.
So I typically provide you all with some format motions. We don't have a motion in the packet for just a supplemental patio, because I think this is the first time you've had just a patio come before you. So I have the motions in front of me. I'd be happy to say it, and then if somebody wants to move it, I'll do that.
I think that's the easiest.
So I find the following to be true, that the proper application for a restaurant permit of compliance was filed and approved previously, and that the proper application for a dining patio supplemental permit of compliance has been filed, that the proper fee has been paid, that the proper notifications have been made, that all parties wishing to be heard have been heard, that the primary purpose is that of a restaurant for the application that's already been approved, that the restaurant and dining patio meet the city's applicable zoning and licensing provisions, that the restaurant and dining patio would not be a detriment to the peace, order, and quiet of the neighborhood and the city, that the restaurant and dining patio will not have an adverse impact on the neighboring properties or on the city of Rehoboth Beach, considering the impact on traffic, parking, and noise, and that the applicant has made no false statements to the city's employees or the commissioners. Therefore, I make a motion that the city manager issue the applicants a supplemental permit of compliance for the operation of a dining patio to be associated with the restaurant. Somebody would need to
I
so
move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of a permit of compliance requested by Ronald Langford of the Sands Incorporated to modify the floor plan of an existing restaurant serving alcohol beverages with a patio known as the Sand Crab Beach Bar.
Take a roll call.
Yep. Any further discussion?
Yes, do we need to indicate it's because of the way this report was done with the bar seating, do we need to indicate that this structure is not really considered a bar, or?
I think the record has made that clear, but if you want something, if you want to condition the approval on, sort of a heightened awareness that the Tiki Hut area shall not be operated as a traditional bar, I think that's appropriate to say it on the record. So let's include that within the motion. Would the motioner
Accept that.
accept that, and the seconder?
Yes, accept.
But just to be clear, and the gentleman representing the 13 seats, bar seats, are the indoor bar seats that he was referencing.
But what I'm talking about is the tiki bar, that's
Tiki,
really
correct.
for, purpose of having lunch, but will not ever be a bar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the building inspector stated on the record that he considers it not necessarily a bar, but
Okay.
whatever you considered it, so. Okay, so we have a motion and a second with an amendment to approve the permanent compliance. Commissioner, down at the end, Edward Szymanski.
Aye.
Commissioner Sheffer.
Aye.
Could you give just a few reasons, as you're voting, just give a couple reasons why you're voting the way you're voting? You think it's a good addition to the community? You don't think it's going to harm the peace and order of the community?
Yeah, for the reasons stated in the motion, and I think it's a great addition to the community and aesthetically pleasing, and so I vote aye.
It meets all the standards that are established. It's within all of the rules that we've have in place. And it certainly is going to be a welcome addition to the aesthetics of the boardwalk. So I say aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Calusi.
I'd say aye for the reasons already stated.
Commissioner Schlosser.
I do think it's actually going to be a good addition to the community. I really applaud the efforts of all the commercial entities that continuously improve the aesthetics. So that is my reasoning for voting aye.
I vote aye for all of the previous reasons stated.
Commissioner Gay.
Aye, it looks like a great new addition to the boardwalk. Look forward to it.
And the chair votes aye, based on comments that have been made already. I walk by that all the time, and as Commissioner Burns said, it's been kind of stale for a couple of years, and I think this will be a nice addition, not only to the boardwalk, but to the Atlantic Sands Hotel. Motion carries. Thank you. Congratulations. We're going to move right on to old business, which is consideration and possible vote on adoption of an ordinance to amend Chapter 270 as it relates to administrative grant of dimensional variances. We've gone over this a number of different meetings, and I think it's been updated based upon the most recent meeting that we had on December 9th, and the city solicitor went over it some more, and we discussed it and put it on the agenda for further consideration today, if any, and a vote. Any comments?
Just real quick, I'm sorry, there was an email received on December 18th, 2019 from Julie Davis regarding the ordinance with some recommended
Yep, and
changes.
that is in the record. Thank you.
So the ordinance is in your packet at page 57 of 66. One thing that Ms. Davis raised that I did want to address is the 30-day provision. If you recall, last time you met, we had there was a 10-day notice provision for the neighbors. You asked that be adjusted so there'd be a 30-day notice provision. I did that adjustment, and that's at line, that is at line
85?
85? 85, line 85. No, actually, that's the one that says how quickly he has to decide.
Is
I'm
it
sorry.
line 80?
Yes, line 80 now, so it requires 30 days. But back to line 85, says that the building official is supposed to decide the application within 45 working days. The ordinance currently now says that he has to give notice for 30 days and should decide it within 30 days. And I thought that's a little bit tight for getting the note of comments and back. So I'd suggest that you change in line 85 from 30 to perhaps 45 days to give some time for the public comment period to end and the building official to make a decision. Maybe it doesn't need to be an additional 15 days.
That wasn't actually the intent of this was to streamline. So
I
if you're
know,
going to make
I
it
know.
the same as everything else, that defeats the purpose. So I propose we keep it at the 45 days. And again,
Well, it's at 30 now.
I mean, we
45.
keep it at
You just want
the,
to give some leeway between the time they get the comments
no, I
back.
understand. I don't know why we're changing it
only-
personally,
well-
because we're trying to streamline. And does this go against the intent of streamlining?
It could. The problem is that if the ordinance now requires a 30-day notice period, so you have to wait 30 days before the comments come back in.
Right.
But the ordinance also says the building official has to make a decision within 30 days of the application.
Oh, I see.
So-
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
right, yeah.
misunderstood that.
Yeah.
You can't do it in the same day? Okay, fair enough.
No, she raises
I
a very
know,
valid
I know.
point in
No,
her
that's a
letter.
good point.
and-
That's a really good point. Sorry, I
That was
misinterpreted.
Change from 30 to 45 on that line.
That's fine.
That's right. So you either move that to 45 or you reduce the notice period back again a little bit to 20 days and have the building official decide within 30 days.
I like the 45. I think
45.
it's-
30 and 45.
Yeah. So that would be a change at line 85 from 30 to 45 days. We did clarify, I think that's right, we talked about this at the workshop meeting, that at line 66, any building setback variance, side yard setback variance, rear yard setback variance that would create or increase a separate nonconformity shall not be approved administratively, so can't do that. Okay.
Right.
Further?
You've already had the public hearing on this, so all
we
of
don't have
those
to go to
boxes have
another?
been checked.
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance to amend Chapter 270 zoning of the municipal code of the city of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, by inserting a new Section 270-28 relating to the administrative grant of dimensional variances up to 1 foot for building setbacks, side yard requirements, and a rear yard requirement for existing structures in a residential zoning district.
With the one amendment at line 85, that 30 days be moved to 45 days.
Yes.
I second.
I agree to that.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve an ordinance to amend Chapter 270 by inserting a new Section 270-28 relating to an administrative grant of dimensional variances, given the amendment that we made on line 85, as it is.
Right.
Any further discussion by the commissioners? If not, anybody in the audience? Yep. Anybody in the audience? No. Since it is a zoning, I'm going to again go by Commissioner Sheffer.
Aye.
And again, if you could state some reasons on the record for the reason why you're voting the way you're voting.
I say aye because the intent of this ordinance was to streamline the process, reduce the fees for very nominal changes to existing structures. And so that's why I say aye.
Commissioner Kaluzzi.
Aye for the reasons stated by Commissioner Sheffer.
Commissioner Schlosser.
Aye for the reasons also stated by Commissioner Sheffer.
Commissioner Byrne.
Aye, for the reasons stated by Commissioner Sheffer. Well done, Steve.
Commissioner
My
Gay.
one time.
I vote aye, and for the reasons stated, and also because of the amount of clarification that we've done on this ordinance in the last few months, I think has made it a lot better. And I would just say that of the examples that came forward during the process, which was the re-siding and how, that only requires a couple of inches, that I would still like to consider down the road inserting that into our code so that that doesn't require any kind of variance at all. For other things, I think this is a nice ordinance.
Thank you. And the chair votes aye. Obviously, things stated already, but I think this does
You didn't
streamline.
get Commissioner.
Oh, shit, Commissioner.
Chesnowski.
I marked you off, Mr. Shazowski.
on the end.
You on the end,
On the end.
sorry.
I vote aye for the reasons stated. I, like Commissioner Gay, I would like to see siding and some of the other minimal things that we could add to the section where it can go up to 24 inches. I'd like to see that codified a bit more to even make it more streamlined than this.
Thank you. And I vote aye based on what's been mentioned as well as the intent of this amendment to the ordinance to streamline the process and allow the building inspectors a little bit more leeway going forward. Thank you. The motion carries. Next, we'll move into consideration and possible vote on adoption of the ordinance to adopt the 2018 international codes. Again, we've been talking about this for a while. The chief building inspector had brought it to us back in August or so of last year to take a look at this. And we did have Matt put on the table a number of changes that he brought to our attention, with also the idea that the majority of the changes weren't that substantial from 2012 to 18. But if you've got any comments, please.
No, not at this time.
And again, one of the big things in the building code, International Building Code, and it was in the 2012 building code that was accepted by Rehoboth, as well as the 2018 that we're suggesting to go with today, is the requirement of residential sprinklers in single-family homes. And as in 2012, the suggestion is to exempt single-family homes as it was in the code as we go forward. That may be something that we want to consider in the future, but it just seems like until more people glom on to the idea, I think it's probably something we should put off.
That's somewhere in this draft.
So it's not in the draft because it's currently in the code. What's currently in the code exempts that section. It's the same section in the 2018 code. So there's nothing in this ordinance that would delete or remove that section, so
Okay,
it just
so
remains.
because we already had
Right.
decided that we weren't going to move forward with that.
That's right.
Okay, very good.
And just, actually, I think Matt brought to my attention, the county is also in the process of looking at updating their code, but I think they're going to put it off until 2021, till that code comes out. But the county also does exempt single-family sprinkler requirements.
Can I ask two questions, Mayor? Is that time? Okay. My first question is probably you, Matt. What's been the fire department's response regarding this continued exemption of the sprinkler systems?
So the fire department's always going to push for residential sprinklers.
Are they aware, like right now, that we're kind of adopting new code that continues to exempt?
They are,
They
yes.
are? Okay, so you had the discussion.
Yes.
And I
great, thank
spoke to Chief Snyder yesterday, actually. He was going to have a few people here, but, so they're always in favor of sprinkling. So that was his response.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure, I figured you did, but I just wanted to check
On
that
that
block.
topic, I'm glad you asked for the fire department's input. Matt, as a building professional, what's your recommendation? I think initially it was that we include it in the code, correct?
So I'm not necessarily on board with them because there's a bunch of logistics that we still have to work out with the sprinkler systems themselves. And keep in mind that the systems right now are designed to give the occupants time to get out of the structure, not necessarily to save the structure. In my opinion, right now, until we get a better developed system, it's probably, it's not a good idea to enforce our contractors to put it in there. Also, we have no idea of what the implications are on our water system as of yet. Once we start packing these thousands of homes with the sprinkler systems, what impact does that have on our water system?
Matt, I think we talked about this before, but isn't it true that builders are required to offer the option and the cost?
That is correct. That's a state mandate.
That's a state mandate?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Are you aware in our city how many new homes take up this opportunity?
Few and far between. I did have one just recently on Maryland Avenue. In lieu of protecting their floor joists, which is a building requirement, they installed a sprinkler system rather than just putting some protective drywall or sheathing underneath. They did opt for that sprinkler system.
That's an option?
It is an option, yeah. You either protect your floor joists or you apply a sprinkler system. To my knowledge, there are very few houses that have been built in the city prior to me that have sprinkler systems in them.
All right, thank you.
Townhouses are required to have sprinkler systems.
Yes, sir, townhouse. Anything above 3 families will be.
Three family,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Matt, what's the, and maybe, maybe Sharon or Matt, not to totally, we talked about it actually last time, but what's kind of your thinking on how we're gonna roll this out and educating kind of the builders and developers, et cetera, of these new codes? What's your thoughts on the communication training strategy there?
And just to remind you, Matt, we've inserted now an April 1, 2020 effective
Right.
date in the orders.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I agree with the April one. We can't, we can't do it January 1 and have these guys that are, right now designing their structures to conform to 2012. We give them a little bit of leeway. We notify, first of the year that we have adopted this ordinance. As of this date, we will now be reviewing and inspecting to the 2018 code.
You'll send out a letter that outlines kind of our communication somehow to
Correct.
to
We'll
everybody
go-
that has a business permit.
Yeah, we'll go through all the proper procedures to alert everybody, put out some
Those
news
procedures are like
notifications.
a letter, and then here's what you have to comply
Letters,
with.
yeah, website notification.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, and it's, the way that this is written, it would only go into effect for applications coming in after April, or April 1, if there's already a permit issued, you're going to start enforcing the
So
2018 code.
So that becomes a little complicated there. I would review and inspect up until April 1 to the 2012 code. But then once we officially got that adopted, I would have to review and inspect to the 2018 code.
New application.
New applications.
No,
So,
but
so
what
in
I'm
other words,
hearing is, even if someone's under construction now,
so they're protected by the ICC. They would be reviewed and inspected under 2012. All new applications after April 1 would be then reviewed by the
so
2018
if someone
code.
gets a permit on March 5th, and you start doing inspections in the late April, late spring, early summer, you're still inspecting that property under the 2012 building code?
Yes.
Correct, okay. Just wanted to be
And
clear.
even if they're not under construction, if the plan has been properly applied, it's been submitted, and once the review starts, if it starts under the 2012, we're going to finish it under 2012.
Correct.
Yeah, I understand.
Want to be clear.
Yep.
Wait, once the review starts, or once the so if an application's sent in on April,
Once it's
It
filed.
goes
once
filed.
it's
Once
filed?
it's
If it's
submitted,
filed
right.
prior
Got it.
to April 1st, 2020, it'll
Okay.
be under the.
Because there's a
2012.
difference between when it's filed and when it's reviewed, so it's when it's filed. Gotcha, thank you.
I'm in favor of adopting the code. I'm a little on the fence about the sprinkler system. I understand a lot of other municipalities haven't adopted it yet. I don't think there's any reason why here in Rehoboth we can't be the leader in that. Just as an example, one of the fire that happened across the street from my house at 2nd in Pennsylvania, one of the firefighters fell into the basement And that probably wouldn't have happened if there was a sprinkler system in the house. So
I also think, given our small lots, that it's likely that a fire will affect a house next door or, you know, several down the row.
And so
that has
many of
happened,
our,
yeah.
so many of our homes are empty in the wintertime. There have been fires where it has jumped and caught other houses on fire because no one even realized it was on fire. So I'm fine adopting it as is, but I would like to continue this discussion, and I don't want to wait another 3-5 years to talk about it again.
I want to reiterate that. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, but I think that gets back to the point that Matt made, is there's some additional research that needs to be done on the effect of the water system. I think those things will be ongoing in anticipation of changes whenever the next ICC changes come out.
Correct.
One of the other things that Matt mentioned was our current water system and what we can actually, you know, how it would affect the water system as we have it today.
Yeah, to be
There's a
clear,
lot of things to be concerned, you know.
this will eventually make its way into the code book, and it will be mandatory in the upcoming code changes. There's probably no way around it.
Okay.
Just as it is for commercial, which. in the past
Correct.
Right.
Anybody else?
So you're saying within a few years it will be,
Not necessarily within a few years. You know, as you know, lobbyists really drive the code. So it depends on how successful they are at, you know, getting it implemented.
okay, but
And then,
eventually,
I'm sorry,
but eventually,
yes.
okay.
Matt, is it your sense that kind of the science of these systems is continuously being worked on to
Oh,
improve
absolutely.
it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so, you know, there is an economic driver out there behind improving these systems.
Yes,
So
sir.
that we'll get beyond the hurdles that you've defined here.
Right.
Well, I'll make the motion to amend Chapter 102 of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach relating to the Building Code, Energy Conservation Code, Existing Building Code, Fuel Gas Code, Mechanical Code, Plumbing Code, Residential Code, and standards for accessible and usable buildings and facilities.
Second.
Before we take a vote? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Walter Birmingham, 123 Hennepin Avenue. I think building and licensing does a fantastic job, and I'm not challenging you, I'm asking the question. The possible implications to the water system. So I'm curious to know what that might be, because I don't know that anybody in this room might know what that might be, because the likelihood of a sprinkler system going off in the city of Rehoboth Beach right now is about zero. So it's not like how many ovens are operating in a multi-story facility, and there's necessity in how you can compute that. But is it anticipated that there might be some problems in the water system that need to be addressed now in anticipation of when you get to it? Because otherwise, the water system will never be built for them if there is a need for it. Do we need to be addressing it now so that when you get ready to do it, that then you start designing the water system to support residential sprinkler systems also? Or do we plan in advance to research what the implications might be to upgrade the lines to handle that also? Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the table to adopt the ordinance to adopt the 2018 international codes. I will go down a line on that as well. Any further discussion? If not, Commissioner Calusi?
Aye.
Commissioner Schlosser?
Aye.
Commissioner Byrne?
Aye.
Commissioner Gay?
Aye.
Commissioner Shrewsnowski?
Aye.
Sheffer?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. The next issue on the agenda is consideration and possible vote on adoption of an ordinance to amend Chapter 51, Planning Commission, as it relates to requirements to be nominated as a member. And again, this is something that we went over at the last meeting on December 9th. And the city solicitor put together something for that meeting, and I think we went over it and decided we'd have a brief discussion on it at this meeting, and then to put that for a vote. And are there any questions, comments?
Just for the benefit of the public, the ordinance will now read, to the extent that it's adopted, this is section 51-2, titled Composition and Term of Office. The City Planning Commission shall consist of 9 members who shall be residents, property owners, registered voters, or persons eligible to register to vote within the city of Rehoboth Beach. Members shall be appointed for terms of 3 years. The appointment of all members shall be made by the mayor, subject to the confirmation by a majority of the elected members of the City of Rehoboth Beach Commissioners.
And I guess the question I raised before was whether we needed the clause about persons eligible to vote, because once they go through the process of establishing eligibility, especially in the terms of leases where you have to go and file the paperwork in Georgetown, why don't they just register to vote, kind of removing all doubt? And you all wanted to leave it in there, which is fine. My only concern is it creates potentially an administrative burden for the staff. And in order to determine, to validate basically someone's requirements and eligibility. So I would suggest, and I know this is not going to go into effect till next fall, and I'm glad to see it come forward. Believe me, it's a great improvement. But I think we also need to look at our documentation process next fall and see both on I had some thoughts anyway about the revision of the application. But also, the documentation, and put the burden on the applicant to come forward with whatever documentation and not the staff. That would be my only thought about it.
Anybody would like to make a motion and a second to, on this ordinance? If there's no further discussion?
Is there public comment?
Do we want
There's
to
a
do comment
public
now or
comment, I
after the
think.
motion?
Oh, you want it after the motion? Okay. Let's see.
I'll move to,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll move to
I'm looking for the language.
adopt the ordinance to amend Chapter 51 of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach by amending Section 51-2 related to prerequisites to serve on the Planning Commission, making the composition and term of office to include who shall be residents, property owners, registered voters, or persons eligible to register to vote within the City of Rehoboth Beach.
Second.
Second.
All right, before we take that, did we have somebody that wanted to say something?
I'm glad you're looking at this, and I just wanted,
We're not looking at it, we're
passing it,
okay.
but I'd like next fall, when you start to appoint people, to make certain if they're holding this 10-year lease on a business they may run, that it's in their name rather than an LLC. So I'm a little concerned, maybe it needs to be clarified. I read the new wording in the ordinance, but is there any concern on your part that there might be, if people can be eligible to vote and say they're eligible to vote, as has been stated, there's a concern they aren't eligible, but you're assuming they are. And if the business is held in an LLC, normally they aren't, but I'm
Well, I
concerned
think-
they may say that it's
yeah.
in their name, but it
Just
in fact
answered
isn't
your
in their
question.
name.
You just answered your question. If
Well-
you're eligible to vote.
So Commissioner Gay, I think one of the things that's been brought up is a new application and put the burden on the person who is filing the application to prove their eligibility.
Well, I just thought it would put it on the record that we want to be pretty scrupulous in making sure that whatever they're stating about how their business is held is accurate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry if, Suzanne Good, 1 Grove Street. Better late than never.
Thank you.
Well, I hear what Suzanne's saying. It's the city charter that's going to dictate who's eligible, and I think that's pretty clear.
Right, but just the documentation, that's all.
Right.
That's all.
No, and I think it's a great idea that the onus be put on the applicant. I don't think there's any dispute over that.
If nothing else, Commissioner Schlosser,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrne,
Aye.
Commissioner Gay.
Aye, and I thank you all for bringing this back, and I'm glad I brought it up a couple months ago.
Great. Commissioner Szymanski.
I'll just also note that, like I mentioned before, I'm not opposed to having a non-resident business owner, even in a limited basis, have a seat on the planning commission. So I would like to look at that again, but I am in favor of this ordinance as written. Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Sheffer.
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda was just a continued brief discussion of priorities for the upcoming budget season. Obviously, the city manager and our staff has been working on diligently putting all this stuff together. I see them on a daily basis, and any kind of evening I'm in the office, I see them in there as well. So they've been doing a great job of putting that stuff together. And this was more than anything else, just from the perspective of the commissioners to discuss some of the priorities maybe we've had for the last couple of years, and maybe something to update and see if we can put it on the table for if the city manager hasn't already put these things into the budget. And with that in mind, I'll just start. My priorities were pretty simple, for the budget, or my priorities for the city as we go forward. One was the dock, the city dock, and I know we're moving right along on that, and I think that's great. We've been talking the CDP's been talking, I think, probably for the last 10 years, but it was talked about a lot in the election this year, and I think recently about code updates. So I think that's something that should be put into the budget, and I think the city manager is considering that. One of the things that has come up in the last year or so is the city had done a reassessment about 4 or 5 years ago, and apparently the person that did the reassessment hasn't been really available the last 3 or 4 years, and so we've been piecemealing that together. That may be something that we want to consider in the near future. The recycling pilot, I know the city manager is working with the Board of Public Works and the Boardwalk Committee on that. Investment in the community hall, I know the bandstand committee is speaking with the city manager on that. I think that's great. Pedestrian safety, maps, crosswalks, signs, I know that's all in place and working. And I think we got a good start on Wilmington and Baltimore Avenue with the LED lights, and I think there's more things to happen there. And those are my thoughts. Anybody else?
I'd just like to, and I think Susan maybe has a little more insight into this. I think a lot of work went into, and a lot of our residents, businesses, and others who enjoy our town gave input to the CDP survey, and I'm hoping there's some major themes that have come out of that. The ones that I saw in my review of the actual responses were a few. One, just to make sure that all of our core assets in the town, the beach, the boardwalk, other key assets, bandstand, convention center, et cetera, that we continue to invest in maintaining and improving those assets, keeping, example, the water safe and our drinking water safe, et cetera. Specifically, that would mean I'd like to see a continued investment in improving stormwater, particularly in North Rehoboth. It's been like our own little oceanfront property there since the rain recently on 4th Street and Sussex Street. I mean, it's literally my car goes into these crevices because of the water's not draining. So, and I know you're working on that. I just am reiterating. Another thing is that I read in the CDP survey thematically is, I'm seeing this again, so you can validate or invalidate it as well, but is, a need for our continued investment in other entertainment venues. We already mentioned the convention center, but I want to reiterate kind of a continued look at and proposal for new seating there in the convention center and there. And also things like LED lights on Rehoboth Avenue is another priority that I have. And I would really love to see a consultant brought on board to look at our code and make recommendations on how we can improve the code overall. So those are, oh, and then just kind of a few concepts, and I'm not saying anybody else agrees with this, but from my perspective, I would love to see a budget come forward to us that imposes no new fees or tax increases on particularly our residents and businesses. Like to also look at ways we can continue to decrease operational expenses within the city, whether it's better fleet management or whatever other ideas you might have. Is there a way to apply some of the parking surplus to maybe reducing wastewater costs or other things where we raised fees last year? I don't know if there is or isn't. I'm just saying conceptually, I'd love to think about these things. And then just one administrative thing, Sharon, I think you guys do a super job with presenting the budget. I would love to see, like you kind of did last year, some summary documents. So if you are going to raise, a certain department's budget, like increase it significantly, I'd love to see a report that just summarizes the increases, things like that, so that we can really understand.
The only thing I'd like to add, and I agree with everything that's been said as far as where our priority should be, but also continued support through the budget process for the fire company and Main Street. I think the leadership at Main Street continues to add value to the overall hospitality and success of our community. And I think that little bit of money that we provide to them goes a long way to invest in our future. So those are the only two things I would add.
And first of all, this will be the first budget process that I've been part of, and consequently, I'm coming into it new. And the first discussion we had last month was a good intro to me of the whole process, but I actually have a number of things. We're running early, so I'm hoping it's okay if I spend some time sort of telling you where I am now as a kind of an entree to the process that starts on January 6th. And I've noted that previous budget discussions, especially in the last couple of years, have started with vision statements as a starting point, for the process. And anybody who knows me knows that my vision for Rehoboth centers around our unique sense of place as the key to both our economic success and our quality of life, and the fiscal responsibility to assure that we maintain the services and the infrastructure to support that. And when I talk about our unique sense of place, I include in that, the essence of a small town, charming homes on tree-lined streets, the beautiful beach, plus the parks, lakes, and green space, and the vibrant small business district of distinctive restaurants and shops. And beyond that, the tranquil atmosphere beyond the boardwalk and the avenues, and distinct neighborhoods. So, one of the things, and Lisa mentioned this, that the CDP survey has come at a very, very good time and can be a valuable tool for us during the budget process, I think. And obviously, the goal of the CDP is to lay the groundwork for what the city will look like for the next 10 years and beyond. But the input that we receive from over 1,100 property owners, business owners, and visitors can also inform our budget decisions in the near term as well. And in that, yes, it was very clear from the survey that the beach and the boardwalk are the city's major assets. And in addition, protecting the natural environment was the top goal for more than 94% of respondents. Overall, throughout, water and air quality, pollution control, tree canopy, conservation, and related infrastructure scored high. On the negative side, our challenges include parking, traffic, managing development, maintaining the infrastructure, and fiscal responsibility. Those were also themes. And interestingly, a smaller survey was done recently through MindMixer on the city website to specifically address important infrastructure needs. And the highest responses for the most important, now there were a much smaller sample on this survey, not nearly as many people as with the CDP, but nevertheless, the highest responses for most important were pedestrian safety and boardwalk replacement and rehabilitation. So there, you see boardwalk again, you see pedestrian safety again. And so I think what part of the message that says to me is, no matter how many surveys we do, these are going to be the themes. I mean, these are always the themes. And I think we can take some comfort in that. I also think that we need to analyze the linkage between users and payers and assure that the distribution of costs and services is fair to all stakeholders. As an example of that, we need to look at our fee structure and make sure the fees are covering the actual costs of providing those services. I want to, I've looked at the CIP for 2024 and want to focus on the timing and financing of those improvements. And I actually look as a starting point to the city staff as being the most knowledgeable for the capital improvement needs, and will follow the criteria laid out in the current CIP for prioritization of those projects based on public health and the safety and effectiveness of our city services. But with that as background, a few of the things, some of the things on my list have already been mentioned, such as stormwater infrastructure maintenance. But I have a couple of other things that I have not heard yet. One is to fund the development of an urban forest master plan to create a citywide plan to increase the number of trees on public property and to emphasize the importance of growing the tree canopy. Many cities and towns have an urban forest plan. We have never had a formal document. In a way, I see it as a sort of a little mini CDP for the urban forest. And I hope that we can at least start that process in the next budget year. Especially, and I know the tree ordinance is being redrafted, but, and that will probably come to us before we might have a plan, but at the same time, it's a reality that houses are taking up more of the lot than they used to, 10, 20 years ago, and the spaces for planning on private property are less. And yet, obviously, the trees are important, and we need to sort of make up for that and have a global plan. The recycling bins, I'm all for. Adding family use and companion accessible restrooms on the boardwalk has come up many times, and I think that should be done. We've talked about a trolley service, and I would like to consider a trolley service that brings people in from parking facilities or residences outside the city, and I think the goal of any trolley service should be to reduce the number of cars in town. Along with that, and this was mentioned, I think, at one of the earlier parking garage task force meetings, about a traffic study. I think, Commissioner Clusie, I heard you, mention that specifically, and I agree that I think we should consider funding a traffic study to inform our long-term strategy for traffic management and parking solutions. I think it was very interesting at the Planning Commission meeting last Friday. Mike Strange was talking about the way, like definitions of single-family houses tie in through DelDOT. To inform, transportation plans, and a single-family home is considered a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but it isn't here, and so that has implications for the number of cars and the amount of traffic, and all that would come into a plan that would be very specific to our town and what that means. We've talked about, and I've been talking about this for several months, the pedestrian safety through the signage and lighting at major intersections and the maintenance of our crosswalks. Creation of more bicycle pedestrian lanes and adding more bike racks. The redevelopment plan for Baltimore and Wilmington Avenue, something that I believe was in the 2010 CDP and has not yet been realized. And I think I think the mayor already mentioned the LED lights. What was interesting about that is that when the Delmarva guy presented, I think back in August, he talked about being able to do 5% of our lights every year at no cost to us, and I think that's great. I would love to see us fund additional conversions to get it done sooner than 5% a year, but nevertheless, we have that advantage going into it that will save us money. And finally, to fund a revision of the city zoning code.
Great, thank you. Anybody?
I can go next, and so many good things have been stated. Susan's was very comprehensive, and so there's nothing I've heard that I disagree with. I think it's key that budget development is driven by a vision. I think that's important that we continue to say that, and we continue to talk about what our vision might be. And I love the unique sense of place. We've been talking about that for years, since we had a speaker some years ago that helped us think about that. And we have to be driven by what's going to keep us unique? What's going to keep folks wanting to invest in new businesses that are unique here, different than on Route 1 or in another community? What's going to keep homeowners wanting to invest the huge amount of money that it takes to be a resident here? And what's going to take to continue to be unique for our visitors to come and spend all that we hope that they will spend, so that they're not in one of the other coastal communities up and down these several states, but Rehoboth Beach becomes the destination. Driven by what will keep us unique, but also some key words that are easy to throw out, but I think they're key to who we want to be. We want to work at being clean, safe, friendly, and welcoming. And so if we kind of hang our priorities on a vision like this, I think that's going to help us, particularly if we can have agreement around common vision. So there's little that hasn't been mentioned, but let me just emphasize a couple of things. A comprehensive review of our code, I think, is really critical. I think we're at that point. We see it all the time as we kind of nitpick problem areas, and we need to take a comprehensive view. We need to figure out how we can do recycling on the boardwalk and beach, and I know there's been some good discussions. And as a part of, how do we become truly a green community in the face of changing climate and seawater rise, we need to go beyond recycling. We need to talk about how do we reduce and reuse everything that's in front of us. Family restrooms were mentioned. I hope we can keep that out in front of us. Facelift on Baltimore and Wilmington Avenue, I think, is key. Certainly, to complete the dock, to complete the wayfinding signage that we've started. I think a citywide plan needs to begin to be developed for how do we become a green infrastructure. So it's infrastructure maintenance of certainly our streets, our sidewalks, our curbs, our boardwalk, our beach, but also to include in infrastructure a need to think about parks and trees and other vegetation, that those are critical parts of the infrastructure that can easily get overlooked. So those are a few things on a long list. It's going to be an exciting process to prioritize. I'm looking forward to it.
You guys didn't leave anything for me.
Makes it easier on the rest.
Yeah.
I agree with almost everything that's been said. The one thing that I would like for us to focus going in is collaborating with other organizations. Like, I know Main Street, we've got a few new grant writing experts that's looking for funding to help streetscape with Baltimore and Wilmington, talking about investing in the community center or the convention center. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there if we are collaborating and working with other organizations. So I'd like to keep that in mind as we're looking at some of these funding needs.
So I'll be last. I think I'm last.
Well, at least.
Well, yeah, so I'm not going to go through my vision. I read it pretty much in June, and I certainly can distribute copies to all of you again if you'd like, but I'll just point out a couple of things that I really would like to see happen soon. One is I'm really happy to see that I hear that the dock is moving forward. I think that's going to be great for our community. We'll have another waterfront. If you've never been on the canal, it's a gorgeous ride. So that, I'm really still very interested in a circulator bus like the Jolly Charlie to reduce the traffic, hopefully. I mean, that's what it's going to be designed to do. So that's really high on my list. And the whole idea of green infrastructure, again, for me, talking about mixed use, I'd like to see us, it's not going to happen overnight, but I think we need to continue to work with the Planning Commission to make sure that mixed use is an option that developers would embrace. And again, some things that we might want to do for commercial construction that would make sense for us in terms of making buildings, the hotels that people are thinking about building, to make those pleasing for us and for our community. So those are kind of my, well, and the merge sign, I think that's going to make a huge difference in town. I really do. Getting that in place is going to be important. And I'm really looking forward to that, and doing something, make sure we have the crosswalks well painted on the avenue, especially where there aren't stoplights, because we have a few places where people cross, and that's where I'd like to see those, you know, a blinking light when somebody's about to cross. So that's my short list for this year.
Great. You know, one of the things, we talk about green infrastructure. What's interesting, and Matt can probably talk to it further, but I've noticed it over the last 10 or 15 years based on certain construction, is the green infrastructure kind of is already taking place with new building materials. Like all these new toilets, they use 1 gallon of water, not 5 gallons of water. And I think that helps our infrastructure. And I think as we go forward, especially as we look at our code, but maybe looking at the building code going forward and providing incentives so that we can be more green. Incentives for people to plant trees, not to cut trees, but incentives to plant trees. Incentives for people to have permeable spaces in their driveway. You know, green roofs, things like that. I mean, right now, for example, in the residential area, you couldn't have a green roof because of the pitch of the roof.
Right.
But if you had a flat roof, maybe you could have one. So I think those are a lot of things, and I'm not saying it's for this year's budget, but I think in the green side, I think there are a lot of potential things for us to do as we go forward that we can actually control without having to create more parks, because we have a lot of parks. But I think there's ways in the infrastructure side or the building side that we can create more of those things.
And as a city, if we could embrace more solar, I think that would only help.
Same kind of thing. You know, I mean, I think there are probably buildings all over town that would be worthwhile to work out those investments. Anything further?
Well, I have one question about, Pat, you mentioned the merge signage, and just as a point of clarification, I didn't include that in mine because we did vote to, that's coming out of the current fiscal year budget, right? So we don't have to include that next year, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought.
They're in process.
We already kind of
Yeah,
took it out.
that's good.
Of some
Okay,
place.
right.
Anything else?
Except, you know, the first time around on any new thing is not going to be perfect.
Oh,
And
no,
so-
right.
So we're going to look at it and try it out and then tweak it. So,
Well, another non-cost thing for this
yeah,
year is.
so it won't be like this year in terms
Right.
of cost,
Yeah.
but
looking for more parking spaces. I mean, the Parking Advisory Committee, for example, that's something that I hope we do this year.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we can get more parking revenue without raising parking rates if we find more spaces. Anything else? If not, that's the end of new business. Any commissioner comments?
Well,
I
no,
should have
we-
brought
we-
this
we-
up, but
you skipped the RBHA.
The new
so-
business.
New business. We put on discussion of the RBHA and SOLA 3 request for single-use plastic. And Susan had asked for this because we had actually talked with SOLA last week or so.
Right.
But you've also had some conversations with the Environment Committee. And
Yes, I mean, in fact, when I put this on, it was more just to, at the very end of Sally Foreman's presentation last time, she asked and said that SOLA was partnering with the Rehoboth Beach homeowners to request that we look into this issue. And they just sort of said that and then gave us a packet. So I wanted to follow up on that. First of all, I had actually started working on it with RBHA back last April. And RBHA has a long history of environmental concerns, and this was kind of a natural extension of some of their prior projects. SOLA came into it as the oldest environmental organization in the city, and one that also is very concerned about obviously the health of the lakes and pollution of the lakes. But RBHA's history includes, as many of you may know, they were instrumental in getting a smoking ban. They encouraged the commissioners to pass that in 2013, and it was passed about 6 months later in 2014. In addition to that, for many years, they've sponsored the coastal cleanup. And one of the things, among the statistics of the coastal cleanup is that we found out what's actually out there. And a lot of the number of cigarette butts has gone way down. And actually, interestingly, between 2017 and 18, the number of straws went way down, but the number of plastic bags and parts of plastic bags went way up. And it's something like 1,000. So we think of our beaches as clean, but there's a lot. The studies show that there's a lot of plastic out there. So that was their motivation for coming forward. And the state has obviously passed a single plastics ban this year. It only applies to retail locations, not to restaurants, and it also applies only to larger retail locations. So it wouldn't actually cover anything here in the city. And it doesn't go into effect until January 2021, which is appropriate in order to give the businesses time to make adjustments. Some of the information that had come to us from SOLA and from RBHA included that around the world, there are 127 countries that have put single plastic ordinances in place. And in addition to that, hundreds of individual communities. And included in that, and this is one of the things I went looking for because I'm always looking for situations that are analogous to ours, are New Jersey coastal towns, such as Stone Harbor and Avalon, and small towns. Westchester, Pennsylvania is a small town like us, and they've done it too. So that means, so it's obviously has an impact on our small businesses. It's a substantial change for our community. And that I think there's a lot of information that needs to be brought out, needs to be researched, shared with the public as well as with the business community to see, how other cities have done it. How has it worked? How have they implemented it? What are the pros and cons? What are the timing issues? And so, yes, knowing that the members of the Environment Committee are probably very interested in this subject as well. I met with a few of them the other day, and they agreed. So my ask for today is that I wanted to put this on the agenda for the January 6th workshop and bring in Dee Durham, who is, she's actually a Newcastle County council person, but she is head of Plastic Free Delaware and is very she's probably the most knowledgeable person I know on just kind of what works everywhere, and was instrumental in getting the state ordinance passed. So I thought it would be good for us to have, even though we're obviously at the very early stages, there are many combinations and permutations. Let me just back up a step and say that. What RBHA and SOLA asked was for us to look at single-use plastics, straws, which is, of course, elementary students came up last year to ask for that, and styrofoam. And the state ban doesn't cover straws or styrofoam. And other ordinances in other towns cover some, but not all of those. So there are a lot of different combinations that can be done. I don't know what the final answer is for us. I also mentioned it at the Chamber Board meeting yesterday, and I'm going to be talking with them more about it because, frankly, they're the biggest stakeholder in who this would impact, from a cost perspective. So there are any number of perspectives we need to be hearing. And I thought if we started with an overview, then that would start the conversation in the process.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. And I think if you think about the groups, the stakeholders here, I think it's going to be very important to have people like Main Street or people like the Chamber get involved in the conversation, and maybe they can attend and you can attend, obviously, the January 3rd meeting.
6th.
That,
the Environmental Committee, right.
The
they're meeting
Environmental
the 3rd,
Committee's
right.
got these things on their agenda,
Right.
and I'm sure that a lot of things will come up. But seeing the type of community that we have and communities that have attempted this, it's not the easiest thing in the world, and you have to get buy-in from an awful lot of the stakeholders. And I think it just takes a lot of time and effort and research, and I appreciate the fact that you've already been making those conversations, because I think, You know, the Environment Committee, I think, is already on it, talking about it. Obviously, SOLA and RBHA have been talking about it, but I think it's something that takes a lot of research, and it will take some time. But on the positive side, a number of the restaurants are already doing this. I've been
Right.
to a
That's
number of
exactly right,
restaurants, the
yeah.
takeouts are in cardboard, or they have wooden stirrers, or they have, you know, paper straws, but it comes down to, from a business perspective, can you do it? I mean, I don't know how many retail shops are gonna have paper bags rather than plastic, but a lot of places don't even give out paper bags anymore. They say, if you wanna shop, bring your own.
Bag, right.
And that may be something that happens, but I think there's steps to go.
But, yeah, Talk to Dogfish has been very successful in making that
heard that.
move.
Right,
They have
yeah.
paper straws, they, you know,
Right.
all the containers that they use are environmentally,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
safe.
You had something?
Yeah, Mayor, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt anyone. I would just maybe recommend that, you know, maybe, so there's not, you know, two different groups going to these state officials, maybe, to reiterate something you said, maybe, Susan, you could go to the meeting on January 3rd and have the environmental committee maybe come
Oh, yeah.
and
No,
brief us
that's-
overall as
Yeah,
opposed to
I
bringing
think they
in
wanted to be here on the 6th as
individual-
well. When I talked to Charlie and some of the others the other day, they agreed. First of all, they wanted to bring Dee in. They thought bringing Dee in was a great idea. But I asked them to also be here that day so that they could add to what, you know, she was talking about. Because a large part of what they're talking is public education. And so it's beyond, I mean, the ordinance or the discussion of an ordinance is one piece. We had a very far-reaching discussion the other day that included not only public education, but included, you know, trying to get the answers to a lot of questions like, where does it all go? You know, I mean, even when you know, where does our recycling go? Where does our yard waste go? The discussion went far beyond the topic of single-use plastics. And I think they want to research and learn those things as a way of educating all of us to use less. So I think it
I was
ties in
just
with their broad mission.
Yeah, I was just encouraging, maybe we have the, like, kind of, maybe, I think it's great for Dee to come in, maybe that's a February thing, maybe have the environmental committee chair and group come in and talk to us a little bit more about what they're thinking our priorities are, and then if Dee, I'm sorry, I don't know Dee, but I mean, bringing her in is the top priority, maybe we do that in February. But I'd sure like to hear from that group first on what they want to focus on, and then start bringing in folks. I think it's fair to that group. We chartered them. There's a lot of folks there doing a lot of work, and I'd just like to hear from them from a broader perspective first. So maybe we put them on the agenda in January, and then if this
Well, they
individual...
are on board to be here
yeah,
in January. They did say that.
So maybe they can give.
They can give an overall,
presentation of what their
yeah,
meeting was about.
yeah.
Now, remember,
and then
remember
we
they've
do the
only met
one-offs.
once.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right, but I mean,
The mayor and I were there, and
Yeah.
it's a starting point.
yeah,
yes,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
That'd be great. Thanks.
So do we want to, so you want me to talk to Dee about postponing until February?
Yeah, I would postpone it at least until the 17th meeting. but
Oh, okay,
maybe-
oh, that's a possibility, I guess,
Yeah,
wouldn't it be?
but, I
Okay.
mean, let's see how
Okay,
it goes
all
on the
right,
6th
okay.
with the environmental
Yeah.
committee. And, you know, because I'm sure it's not going to be a 5-minute conversation.
Oh, right, no, exactly, yeah, okay.
Just want to,
Sounds
That's
great.
fine. Well, that,
It's
yeah,
great
maybe we can
that-
try to get, actually, a monthly meeting may be even better because we'd get more attendance or something. So, yeah, sure.
all right, now we go to commissioner comments. Anybody? I have
You think we
one.
commented enough? No.
I have one. If you'll notice on the agenda, Ann has put a little paragraph down at the bottom in bold letters, and it's going to go on all the agendas. And it basically says, correspondence relating to agenda items and any additional documents relating to agenda items must be submitted no later than 2 full business days. I asked her to put this on here just because we've got so many meetings and, you know, documents. I mean, some of our packets are 100 pages plus, and she's very busy, and her group is very busy for the last few days of the week, getting everything together. And if she gets something, you know, that last day, it's hard for her to get it into the page, because we get these things 3 or 4 times a day in the last couple days. So if you could work with Ann, I mean, we're trying to get the agendas out 7 days ahead of time or even more. But if any kind of documentation that we want to go in, and that's for the public as well, any kind of emails or something you want to send, please send it in like Monday, not Friday morning or Thursday afternoon, so.
Do we still have the option to attach support documents after the meeting? Because I didn't give you my budget one specifically because I didn't want to give it to you at the last minute. But is that still something we can do to have things? Okay, all right.
Yeah, there's no time limit. That's it for
I just
my
have a
commissioner.
really quick question. Are we still on track with merge and everything, to try and get these things in place before the beginning of the season? Is that still on track? I think we're going to get an update in December. Okay, great, thanks.
And I would just like to use this opportunity at holiday time especially to thank all of the city staff, many of whom have thankless jobs, the water department, the trash department, the streets department, building and licensing, IT, police, people that work so hard every day for us. I just want to say thank you to them and thank you to the city manager and happy holidays to all.
Same.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Just a reminder, future meeting dates on the 6th. We've got 2 meetings. One is the budget meeting, one is the workshop meeting at 9, and then the budget meetings at 1. And then also 2 meetings on the 17th. One is the budget meeting at 10 a.m. and then the regular meeting at 3 p.m. And if there's nothing else, any citizen comments? No, I guess not. This meeting is
Oh,
adjourned.
Matt?
Happy holidays,
Happy
Commissioners.
holidays.
Holidays,
Back
everyone.